Welcome to the Mighty Baker Business Circle podcast. I am your host, Pete Tidwell, bakery business coach at the Mighty Baker. Join me as I share my knowledge and expertise on essential topics for running a successful bakery business. Each week, I will provide tips and strategies on time management, marketing management, and mindset management. In addition, I will be interviewing other bakery entrepreneurs to provide listeners with valuable insights and inspiration. Don't forget to join the Mighty Baker Business Circle Facebook group for a community of bakery and small food business entrepreneurs to connect and share knowledge. Tune in and let me be your guide on your journey to bakery business success. So come on and let's jump right in the mixing bowl and see what is being mixed up and discussed in this week's episode of the Mighty Baker Business Circle podcast. Let's go.
Okay, yeah. Yeah.
Welcome to the Mighty Baker Business Circle podcast. I'm so excited to be here today. I have a friend of mine on the podcast today that I actually went through my life coach certification with and have been able to spend time with her and coach back and forth with her. And she had me as a guest on her podcast about probably a year ago. And now I have this special opportunity to be able to have her on my podcast. So right before we jump in, I'm going to have her give a quick introduction into who she is and what she is all about.
Thank you so much, Pete. I am so excited to be here. So my name is Erin Woodruff. I am a communications coach, and I work with high-achieving women married to introverts. And I help them create time for themselves, communicate their needs and their desires, but also figure out what they want to do with their life and how all of that can blend together in a really happy way moving forward and stay happily married to an introvert. So it's a lot of fun. And like Pete said, we went to coach training together. So we've known each other for about 2 years and we have had the best friendship, and I've loved being connected with you, Pete.
Oh, it's so much fun. And so the reason I asked Erin to come on my podcast today is all through our certification, as well as just in our interactions, she has a lot of passions for communication. She has a lot of passions for time management. And when it gets into business ownership and being an entrepreneur, opening a business, there's so many things to juggle and keep track of. And so I really wanted to get her on here and chat with her and get some of her insight that could possibly be helpful for you out there that are trying to build your businesses. So really excited to have Erin on here. So we're going to jump right into this. And so first off, Erin, I think you touched on this a little bit, but can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you got started into your business, like into this coaching world? What kind of brought you here?
Yeah. In a very short version, I have always wanted to be an entrepreneur. When I was about 10 years old, I remember thinking, I want to own my own business. And my dad runs his own business, so maybe that's where I got it, or it's just something I saw modeled. And then in my mid-20s, I started really learning about life coaching, and I was so interested by that. And one thing led to another. I got certified as a life coach, and I opened my own business, and I realized this is so much fun. This is really where I'm meant to be. And the connections that I've made and the people I've been able to help has just reminded me and fortified that belief deep in me that this is something that I love doing. And so that's a little bit of background. And as far as how I got into communications, like Pete mentioned, I've also done a lot of time management coaching, but I actually have a higher education degree in strategic communications. So after I did time management coaching for about a year and a half, I went back to the basics, which I believe really is our ability to communicate with ourselves and with the people around us, and how that can make or break our relationships and our business structure and everything else. So I love talking about all things to craft and build. I'm very analytic in that way about what is the formula to have a hard conversation and to communicate well, and how to structure your time so you can actually get things done.
Yeah, that's awesome. So for those of you listening, most of the people that I have listening, I think, are very small business owners that have maybe just themselves or maybe one employee. But with that said, you guys, as you're listening and as you grow your business and as you grow your team and have to have tough conversations, or if you have other communications that you need to have, make sure you go check out Erin's Instagram page so that you can keep up to date on the things that she's talking about, because there's some really helpful things in there that have helped me as well. And I don't think I've actually told Erin this, but just over the last little while, I've had some really good conversations with my wife. And one of the things that she posted a little while ago kind of stood out to me. So that was something just to keep in mind as you're growing your business, as you have other relationships and communication. Make sure you keep Erin on your little bookmark to see what she has going on, because she has some fun things. So when it comes to like your weekly schedule and you're working on goals and tasks, could you like maybe walk through the process of how you schedule your weekly schedule and how you juggle all the different things that you need to put on there each week?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I really recommend to anybody to schedule and plan weekly. It is so important, and it will make or break your business and the things that you want to get done. If you're trying to plan either bi-weekly or monthly, it gets too overwhelming, and that's when things really start falling through the cracks. And I am a fan of planning bigger goals and setting goals and long-term things that are going to take more time. But when it comes to actually getting things done, you need to be checking in with yourself at least once a week, if not every day. But for some people, every day seems totally irrational or totally illogical. It's not going to happen. So I always recommend at least once a week. And for me personally, I always plan on Sunday afternoon. It's usually a time that I have downtime. It's calmer at my house, and I usually find that time to be refreshing for me to look forward to the next week that's coming and to look at all the things. And usually I am married, so usually my husband's home and we can talk about things. I can check in with him. So throughout my planning, I feel like it's the best collaboration time for myself and for other people that are involved with my planning. And it was 2 weeks ago now, I didn't plan on Sunday afternoon, and I thought, oh, I have a calm week ahead. It's not going to be a big deal. I don't need to do it. And my whole week was off. And I felt weird. And I was like, I'm not getting things done. I don't know what I'm doing. And I felt really confused. Every time I sat down to work at my computer, I was like, wait, what am I supposed to be doing? And so what I recommend, and then the next week, or this last week that just happened, it was Sunday afternoon. And I was like, you know what? I need to plan. I just need to. It makes the biggest difference. So when you sit down to plan, and I tell you all of that because it makes a difference. And once you start checking in with yourself on a regular basis, you're going to start seeing how planning at least once a week can affect everything else that you're doing throughout the week. So on Sunday afternoon, I usually sit down and I look at everything that's already set in stone. What are all the appointments that I have? What are the coaching calls that I have? What is my husband's work schedule like? Is there anything that he needs help with, or is he needing to go in earlier, stay later, all of those things? Or do we have family events? Are there birthdays? Just talk about anything that is possibly happening that week that is out of the ordinary, because all of us have a lot of set routines that are just built in for us, like kids' school schedules is a really good example. But right now it's a spring break for a lot of people. And I don't know when this episode will be airing, but sometimes when things go different in our kids' school schedule, those are things we need to be planning. And so when you can sit down once a week and you can see all of the things ahead, that already is getting yourself in a more prepared state than it would be otherwise. You already know. And anytime we can give our brains a heads up of this is coming, it just starts working to solve all the problems in the background. It's really amazing. And so we won't be caught off guard as much. We'll be a lot more prepared for things. And then all of the other stuff, as far as like, well, I need to do all of these things and they don't have a set plan. That's when you get to start making, well, I'm going to have time here, here, and here. And you get to start filling in the blanks of when you want to get things done.
It's so interesting that my experience has been similar. And the one thing I was very like against scheduling for a long time. And it's funny because I think so many people battle against it. But what you said there is so true, is once you actually start scheduling, your brain slowly starts kind of switching over to the space of being able to figure out where to fit things in. But you have to make the first step first and actually try it out, and don't give up when it gets hard.
Yeah, because it will get hard. It never necessarily gets easier. And I do want to share one other thing. You said, how do you juggle all of the life and business responsibilities?
Yeah.
And I heard something recently that I loved, because I think the words juggling or balancing can cause a little bit of anxiety when you think about having to do it all, at least for me. And I heard the idea of an integration. You have a work-life integration instead of a work-life balance. You have work-life integration. And I really liked that, because when we think about juggling or balancing, that implies that something could always fall, or something could always go wrong, or something's off balance. And so things are now off balance and you need to go fix it. But I liked the idea of work-life integration, because I think if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably a business owner, right? And when you own a business, you don't leave work at the office. It's different when you have your workspace either in your home or you run a business. So it's not about one or the other, but it's about how it can work together, and it can integrate to work well together, and your family and all other parts of your life can be a part of that. And I really liked that idea of it integrating together to work well.
That's really cool. That's a really cool principle, because you think about that, because integration just feels like coming together, whereas juggling is like, oh no, oh no, oh no. And there's so much pressure there. That's so interesting. Because that brings me to my next question too, is, when you have things all scheduled out, even when you have your personal items, your things with your family, your spouse, all those kind of things, how would you suggest dealing with when you have emergencies or fires, or like things that just come up out of nowhere that can sometimes derail your whole schedule? And that's probably part of that integration, but I'd be curious about what your thoughts are there.
It's a really good point to bring up, because there are things, and I feel like this week, and we talked a little bit off record that both of us have kind of had a wonky week, but this week has been a really good telling for me of how it's been able to play out for me and whether or not I'm prepared. So first of all, I think if you can make a plan, then you still know in the back of your mind the things you want to get done, not in a pressure-filled way, but in a these are my highest priority way. And on Monday this week, we're recording this podcast on a Wednesday, and 2 days ago, my toddler woke up from her nap much earlier than she should have. She only slept for like an hour and a half, and she usually sleeps about 3 hours. And I heard her wake up, and my motherly intuition went, something's wrong. And I walked into the room, and I usually just like let her cry herself back to sleep or whatever. But I walked into the room, and there was puke all over the crib. All over it. It was awful. And then I know I won't go into too many details, but I stopped. I was working at that point because I work while she naps, and I just dropped everything, because nothing's more important than cleaning up a toddler bed that has puke all over it. So I put her in the tub, and I just spent the rest of the day with her, and she threw up 2 more times on Monday.
Oh.
And I didn't get anything done. It was just one of those days that I'm like, well, I guess all of my business things are going to have to wait. I'm going to figure out how to make it happen, but I don't know how. And so I think number one is having a plan and knowing that you're going to follow through. And then yesterday, because I think anyone who has ever lost their stomach and thrown up knows that the day after is kind of a really hard day, and you feel really groggy and you feel really drained. And yesterday was that day for my toddler, and she was just really mellow all day. And we went on a walk outside. It was a beautiful day, and I put her in the stroller, and she fell asleep in the stroller, which never happens. I don't think it's happened for like over a year. And I was like, what in the world? She must be really sick, or she must be really drained. And I got home and I pushed her inside, and she was out. Like, you know what? Sometimes when they stir, like when the garage door opens when you get home, or the door, nothing. So I was like, okay, this is a great opportunity for me to just sit and work. So I just parked her stroller right by my work chair, and she slept for 2 hours in the stroller, and I got work done. And I'm telling you all of this because sometimes we don't know when those moments are going to happen, because things will get really thrown off one day, but then the next day there's going to be an opportunity for you to make up the time. But if you don't have a plan, then when the time comes for you to make up the time, it is going to catch you off guard and you're going to feel scattered. And so going back to planning, it's not about following through on every single thing you said you're going to do when you're going to do it, but just be flexible. Especially if you have kids, you know things are going to happen. Life just happens differently with kids.
It's so true. It's so true. And,
yeah.
and in those moments, it's so hard because at least for me, and maybe this gets to your communication a little bit, because I have a rough time communicating with myself when I'm in those situations, because then I have judgment towards myself, because then I'm like, I wasn't able to get XYZ done. But that's a tough thing. But being able to have a plan and just have in the back of your mind, like, it's okay. Life happens, and we can shift things a little bit.
Yes. And I love that you bring it up, because that is something I talk to my clients about a lot, is the concept of building self-trust. Because especially when things like our kids throwing up, that's out of our control. We did not plan that, and it's not our fault. So if you are choosing to put your kid over your work, you know you're doing the thing you want to do. But where the self-trust comes in is you're telling yourself, it didn't go the way that I thought it was going to. But I know I'm going to get it done. I'm going to figure it out, because I always show up for myself. I trust myself enough to follow through, but I'm putting what's number one for me right now, and all of the other stuff is going to work out too.
Oh, it's so huge.
Yeah.
So huge.
It's that internal dialogue that's going to make or break whether or not you actually get those things done.
It's such a huge thing. And that's one reason that I decided to go and get certified as a life coach. How Erin and I met is because I needed help with those kind of things. And that inner chatter and just being able to deal with that is such a huge part of business. And just being flexible and being malleable, and knowing that things are going to have to shift, because sometimes in business, obviously, like there's a lot of things out of our control in business that just come up, and you got to deal with them. And then you can just kind of shift things around. And it gets a little bit stressful sometimes, but we can handle it.
Oh yeah, we can. With practice and a lot of mental management, we can.
Yes. And with coaching. Okay. So that kind of goes through some challenges when we have, some of those things come up. Are there any scheduling or like little hacks or something that you've found that is like something that could help somebody that's looking at this, maybe that they haven't really started scheduling yet, and they're like, I'd like to try, but I don't know what to do? Is there like a hack or a tool that you could maybe talk to really quickly?
Yeah, definitely. I have a lot of hacks, and some work for some people and others don't. And that's why you got to try things out, right? But I love the idea of baseline minimums. And I don't know if you've talked to about baseline minimums on your podcast, but I love this idea that no matter what, baseline minimums are your non-negotiables. No matter what is going to happen today, or what is going to happen this week. And I think if you can start at your baseline minimum and pick out what those things are within your business or within your life, then you can start growing from there, because it forces you to really look at the things that are most important. And even though this is not necessarily a business baseline minimum, the example that I always give is no matter what, I brush my teeth 2 times a day. I brush my teeth in the morning and I brush my teeth in the evening. And for me, that's a baseline minimum. And every now and then I'll brush my teeth 3 times in one day if I'm going out to some event or whatever. But I always know that for my oral hygiene and just for my own self-care, that is a baseline minimum for me. And sometimes people have baseline minimums as far as their exercise goals. They might want to work out 3 times per week. So what for you in your business are your baseline minimums? Is it to check in with your bookkeeper once a week? Is it to make sure there's no dirty dishes in the sink when you leave your bakery at night? There's so many different things that you can decide that once you pick that baseline minimum, it can make a huge difference in everything else that you're doing without even intentionally trying to affect other areas.
Yeah, that's a really cool tool. I have not talked about that on my podcast at all with my listeners, and I love that because that's a good, I have a good example with my workflow is I was having a tough time getting certain things done each week. And so then I chose back about a month or so ago, okay, at minimum, this is what I'm doing every week.
Mhm.
And I've done that for the last month. And now after I've done it for a few weeks, I now feel more comfortable to add things to it because now I have confidence that I can do the baseline minimum. Whereas before I didn't have that confidence. So it's also that building up the confidence, like you mentioned.
Yeah. And not only that, but when we build up that confidence, again, going back to our work schedules, our workflow will change week to week. So what do you know that you can follow through with no matter how crazy the week? And like you said, Pete, now you're like, oh, I can take on more. But do you next week it might not look the same way. So again, going back to your baseline minimum of no matter what, I'm going to do these things, and sometimes I can take on more, and that's great.
I like that a lot. That's a good distinction to make because you could probably, at least myself, I could quickly go the other route and then put too many things on my schedule.
And that's going to happen. Just know that it doesn't mean anything about you necessarily when things don't go according to plan. You can still look and say, oh, well, I still hit my baseline minimum. So yay me. Like I'm doing great.
Yeah. Oh man, I love that. That's so good. Okay, before I get into my next few questions, anything else from like a time management standpoint? Because my next few questions are a little bit more along the lines of you running your business, what you like about it, what kind of advice you have for others. But when it comes to scheduling time, anything else that came across your mind that you'd like to share?
Yeah, there's 2 more things that I have that I really want to just drive home. First of all, there are many times when things are emergencies, but they aren't as frequent as we think. I truly believe that we have been conditioned to believe that that things are more important than they actually are. And my toddler throwing up in her bed, I'm sorry I keep saying that. So sorry if you're offended by that.
All good.
That is a real emergency. That's something I chose to drop everything to go take care of. And then other times a salesman knocks on our door and we answer the door and we listen to their pitch for 20 minutes. That's not an emergency. And being able to close the door in the salesman's face or to not answer at all, or to say, I have a different commitment right now. I have a call to be on, even if it's with yourself. And even with our phones, every time we get a notification, right now, I'm getting about 1 million March Madness notifications a day. And my brain is conditioned to believe that it is super important that I look at it right now. So when it comes to time management, just know when things happen, ask yourself, is this really the highest priority? Is this really an emergency? Does this really matter more than the thing that I'm currently doing? Because you have to use that discernment to decide for yourself what is the most important, because you are the boss. When we run our own businesses, we are the boss. You're the boss, you get to decide. And the more you can lean into that, the more control you're going to feel like you have over your business and your time.
That's so good. That's so good. Oh, that's really amazing. And you said a second thing too?
Oh yeah. When you own a business, and I kind of already touched on this, your schedule is wonky sometimes, or work from home, things ebb and flow. And when they aren't predictable, you can still make a plan, and you can make a plan to work in your favor. And just try to believe that. If you don't believe that right now, try to believe that, because that's the best part about entrepreneurship, is that you are in charge. Again, you're the boss. And so if you are running your own business and feel like you can't control any of the outside factors, how can you make them work in your favor? How can you make your interesting business model, whatever it is? And I know, Pete, you're a baker, and bakers, for the most part, start really early in the morning. So how can you use that early morning schedule to work in your favor at the end of the day, maybe at the beginning of the day, however it looks? How can you use your business to work in your favor, because you really are in charge of your time?
Yeah, it's so true. And once you make that switch, it gets down to like in the life coach school that we went to, the model talking about the circumstances and being a victim of your circumstances, instead having power over that and getting to choose how you show up. It's that little switch there. And I have some past episodes kind of discussing through some of the model and those kind of things. And it's such an important switch that until you make that switch in your brain, it's a really hard thing to understand, I think.
Yeah. Yep. It is, but you can get there. It makes all the difference.
Oh yeah. World of a difference. Okay. So my next question for you is, what do you enjoy most about owning and running your own business, and what keeps you motivated?
I love this question. Honestly, because it's all on me, and it seems like a lot of pressure, but also what I just said, I get to decide. I call the shots. I'm the boss. I'm the one in charge. And I actually really love that. I've worked for a lot of people, and I just have never liked working for other people. And in those really hard moments when I'm doubting myself and regretting every decision I've ever made to start my own business, I go back to those reasons, because I ask myself, well, do I want to go work for someone else? There's always the option, right? And my initial answer is always no. So then I have to remind myself, okay, I chose to do this. I'm choosing to do this every day because I want to. I actually want to be here. And so going back to your reasons why you started it in the first place, was it to have more time with your family? Is it because you love baking? Is it because you don't want to work for anybody else because you don't want to be told what to do, which is my reason? But that right there is a huge reason that keeps me motivated.
Well, that's really great. And it's something I talked about with my clients too, of just when I first meet with somebody, that's usually my first question, is not necessarily what your business is, but why did you start it? What is the reason that you started it? Why did you even start this journey in the first place? Because in that answer is usually finding what is going to keep you motivated.
Yeah, exactly.
I
love
huge.
that. I love that you do that with your clients.
Yeah, it's something that I missed out on. I think as a business owner myself, I jumped in, and for years, like, I knew why I started, but I never really looked into it because I got too busy and I got consumed by being a business owner, and I kind of forgot over the time. So I think it's important to remember those things. So with that said, what advice would you give to aspiring business owners? I mean, whether it's a bakery business client of mine, or whether it's another person that just wants to open up a coaching business or just a home business of some sorts, what kind of advice would you give for them to either start or bring their skills to the next level?
I would say get good at making plans and get good at following through on the things that you said you were going to do. Those are the top two things. And I know we've talked about it a lot in the time management, but really at the end of the day, why do you want to start a business? Understand your why and then start moving towards it. And when you move towards things, you have to make a plan. Because you're the boss, no one's going to tell you what to do. So you have to make a plan and you have to show up for yourself. And it can be so hard if you're showing up for yourself day after day after day after year, and no one else is showing up to push you. Can you do it? Can you make a plan and then show up for yourself and do it? And then evaluate along the way. What's working? What's not working? Are there things you need to change? And I think I just recently started really evaluating, especially when it comes to planning. Like, did I plan too much? Did I not plan enough? What worked? What didn't work? And those three things seriously have changed the way I show up for myself in my business.
Thank you for sharing those so much. Any little tips like that help me so much. Just as you were talking, I was thinking of a few things. Oh, I could totally implement some of those things for me. So I really, really appreciate that. So when it comes to your business and what you're working on, do you have any sneak peeks into things that you're working on that you'd like to tell my followers about? I mean, a lot of the people that listen to my podcast are small business owners. Some of them are at-home moms that run like a bakery business. Like, there's so many different people that come from different walks of life. But please let us know what things you have coming up and ways that people can know what you're all about.
Yeah, well, thank you. So one of the things that I'm working on and will be released probably before this podcast episode airs, because I'm very close to finishing it, is I'm working on a free resource and I'm calling it the Hard Conversations Toolbox. And it is a PDF guide and it's very structured with references and whatnot about how to have hard conversations within a relationship, what that can look like, and I give you 4 steps to prepare yourself for a hard conversation. I give you 6 things to do to create safety for you and the other person within a conversation, so you don't feel attacked or defensive and you can actually make progress in a conversation, and what to do when the hard conversation is over and how you can create stronger relationships and move through hard things together. Because I created this specifically because I think, especially as business owners and anyone in a relationship, and that's who I created it for. But me as a business owner, I created it for my own experience, because there are so many hard conversations that you have to have when you're running your own business. And I learned so many things throughout my own experience of things not to do and things to do and things that work really well. So that is a big one that I would love to just offer to anyone who's listening. It's a free resource. You can go grab the PDF. And then the other thing that I'm working on is a Communications 101 podcast series. So I have a podcast that comes out weekly, and I will be releasing a Communications 101 series within the next few months.
That's awesome. I'm excited to hear those. I'm really, really stoked. That's exciting. I'm excited to check out that PDF too. I'll get my hands on that, and I'll make sure I get all the links from Erin to put in the show notes and make sure that you guys can find her very easily. So, okay, how I end my podcast is I usually have a little bit of a lightning round of questions. Some you could have longer answers to. But we're going to go through these because I just like to ask random questions to people. Perfect. And I like it. So, what is the best concert that you've ever attended?
I would have to say The Score. They are a less known band, and we became really just obsessed with them a few years ago, and we looked online, are they going to be do they tour near us? And we lived in Salt Lake at the time, and they were coming to Salt Lake the next day. And we were like, what? So we went, and it was a small venue. There were probably only like 300 people, but it was hands down the best concert I've ever been to. It was amazing. So look them up. They're just as good live as they are on their soundtrack. Their name is The Score.
Oh, I love it. Okay, what is the most memorable dessert that you've ever had?
Oh, there's so many, but the one that's most memorable right now is I went to Mexico a few months ago and I had creme brulee at a French restaurant, and it was amazing. So I would say creme brulee.
Oh, I love it. So I have to make a quick comment here. So I love creme brulee as well. I tried a chocolate creme brulee once
Oh,
that was
wow.
really, really good. And it was incredible. So I don't know if any place in Utah sells it, but maybe I'll have to make it sometime. There we go.
Oh yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, so next question is, do you have any like business fail stories or something, some mishap that happened in your business that you learned from that I would love to hear?
There's so many. There's so many. That I guess that's something in entrepreneurship is you just have to get comfortable with failure. But recently I launched a brand new freebie and like 30-day challenge, and the mobile version of the web page was never edited, so it wasn't on. And so I was like,
no.
if you got on a computer you could see it, but as soon as you looked on your phone you couldn't see it anymore. And it was one of those moments. I never double checked it, didn't even think about it. And then a lot of people were messaging me saying, this link isn't working, this link isn't working. And I was like, what? And then it took me forever to figure out what was going on. So that was definitely a business fail recently that I felt like I should have known better.
Well, and I like asking that because I think I had an episode last week just about failure and how failure is a fuel for the success of our business to propel us forward. And so I like to ask that because, and everything that could be considered a failure or a setback, there's always learnings there to be able to move you to the next piece. And it's a big thing I talk about often in my podcast because it's an important one for sure.
It really is.
Okay, so back to like dessert or food, but what's the most memorable cake, dessert, or food that you have made? Not that you've like bought from somewhere, but that you have made.
I will say I made a lemon bar cake last year. That was just amazing. It was lemon cake with a shortbread crust. You baked the cake layer on a shortbread crust, and there was lemon curd and lemon frosting. And it was like the most summery, delicious treat ever.
Oh, I love it. Oh, that sounds delicious. Okay, what is a common myth about the type of business that you run?
I think one is, for me as a communications coach specifically, people think that communications degrees or coaches are jokes and that everyone knows how to talk and communicate. And it's kind of funny that people think that, and then they're so frustrated and can't understand why they have conflict in their relationships. So I think that is a big common myth.
I love it. Okay, when it gets to like books and podcasts, are there any books that you're reading or have read or podcasts that you would recommend to my listeners?
Yes, all three of them are books. I love podcasts, but these three books are probably my go-to as far as learning and rereading. Number one is Eat That Frog. And Pete knows how much I talk about this book. It's really short and it's a time management book. It's super short and it's just packed with strategy and how to implement strategies of productivity and to stop procrastination. It's one of those you can use just as a reference manual. It's super awesome. The second one is called Quiet, and I loved this book. The subtitle is, it's called Quiet, The Power of Introverts in a World That Can't Stop Talking. And I love this book because it gave me a lot of insight into my own relationship, especially where I work with extroverts married to introverts. It gave me insight into myself as an extrovert, but also my partner as an introvert, and how I could create a lot of harmony and balance by understanding just personality differences in general. And I think that's something we can all learn from. And then the last one is Atomic Habits by James Clear. Sorry, I should have said all of the names with them, but Atomic Habits, it's really great about building habits that can actually last rather than starting things and letting them fall through the cracks.
Oh, I love it. Thank you for sharing those. I am always looking for new books and podcasts, and I know people are always looking for places to learn. So I love
Mhm.
the recommendations. I really appreciate that. Um, okay, so what would you say is the most important lesson you've learned on your journey? I know this is a big question, but what if you were to say what your most important lesson or
Mhm.
lessons have been, what would they
Yeah.
be?
I think the biggest one, and I've mentioned this earlier, but the biggest one really is that I am in control of my life, and that what I think, how I feel, the things I do are what actually creates my results in my life. And that has given me so much power back to believe that I can actually do it as an entrepreneur, that is so much more is inside of my control than I can even imagine. That there are circumstances outside of us, but we get to decide every single day how we want to show up within our circumstances. You always have that power, and that's what I think is the most powerful thing I've learned.
Yes. So good. Okay, what occupation other than your own would you like to try?
Oh man. And I didn't read that one in your sorry.
On the spot, on the
Oh,
spot.
okay. What occupation other than my own would I like to try? I think it would be really fun to be a sports announcer. I would love to be a sideline reporter, especially because I think maybe just March Madness is going on so much right now and it's just exciting. But I think that would be so much fun. You get to travel a lot and you just gotta get to have a lot of fun.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, so before I close this, any other like cap, like end thought or icing on the cake, if you will, maybe I should call it that, right?
Yeah.
But any like final closing comments, icing on the cake that you want to finish with?
Just first of all, thank you so much, Pete, for having me. It's been so much fun to be here. And to anyone who's listening, I hope you can remember that you really are in control of your life and your business and all the things that are going into the things that are creating your life. So the sooner you can lean into that and the sooner you'll start planning to have success rather than hoping that maybe something will work out. So just keep believing, keep listening to Pete, keep really engaging with content that is going to inspire you to want to be better because it is possible. And that's what I think is so great about what we do as coaches. So thanks again, Pete, for having me. It's been so much fun.
Hey, you are so welcome. Thank you so much, Erin, for joining us. And like I mentioned earlier, I will make sure that I put links in the show notes and I'll post about it on Instagram with links to her pages so that you guys can follow her and see what she's up to as well. And we'll have to have her back on the podcast like 6 months or a year from now and check up with her and see how she's doing. So other than that, I hope you all have an amazing day. Thank you so much for joining us on my podcast, the Mighty Baker Business Circle podcast. And we hope you have a mighty day and we'll see you on the next podcast. See ya. Bye. Thanks for tuning in to the Mighty Baker Business Circle podcast. Join the Mighty Baker Business Circle Facebook group to connect with other bakery and small food business entrepreneurs and access exclusive resources and support. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform to help us improve and reach more listeners. Don't hesitate to reach out to us on social media or through our website if you have any questions or feedback. Keep baking, stay inspired, and see you on the next episode.